Good morning. Here we have the second class today, and it is second topic today, and it is Dvar Malchut, the Rebbe's speech, royal words, spoken in 1991. Let's see where this is. Here we go. 1991. Here we go. Yud Dalet Elul, 1991. Very nice pictures, by the way. These pictures, these drawings are from Rabbi Baruch Nachshon of blessed memory. I know him very well. The Rebbe put a lot of, gave him a lot of attention and encouragement about his pictures, especially his use of color is very beautiful. Okay. When we read the Torah, every week. Now, the Jews have been reading the Torah nonstop for 3,300 years, since it was given. 3,300, what is it, in 30 years? Something. And nonstop, the Jewish people are reading the Torah in public. And even though they've been dispersed all over the world, they still read the Torah. And people, of course, move from one place to another. And there's always visitors, and they see that if there's a mistake in the Torah, immediately it's corrected. Go to any normal Jewish synagogue, and they read the Torah, you'll see that if there's the smallest mistake is made, then everyone immediately corrects it. There's only 3 or 4 people that correct it. They don't let the one who's reading from the Torah continue until he corrects himself, right? A vowel is wrong, a letter is wrong. And this has been going on for 3,000 years. So that when we read the Torah is not just we do it because of a ritual. It's a religious thing, and you just don't ask any questions. It's a religious thing, and you do ask questions. You're supposed to ask questions. Because the whole idea of the Torah is, the word Torah means teaching. So it comes to teach us something. And the Torah is there to teach us what life is really about. We have to remember that the Torah, the author of the Torah is God. The author of the Torah is not Moses. Moses brought the Torah from God on Mount Sinai. How do we know it was God? Because the Jewish people heard the first 2 commandments. They heard and they said, we can't take it anymore. So the first 2 commandments were directly from God. And the rest of the 10 commandments, Moses spoke, but he spoke with a tremendously powerful voice that everybody heard, the 10 commandments. And then Moses went up for 40 days and he brought the rest of the Torah down. He was supposed to, but he broke the Torah. Anyway, the history is that finally the Jewish people got all the Torah and all of the laws, but it was all written by God. God told Moses what to say. That's why God wanted to do it. God could have given it directly to the Jewish people on his own, but the Jewish people didn't want it. It was too powerful, too awesome. Too awesome. I mean, it doesn't make any sense even now. What does it mean God spoke to the Jewish people? Say, angel spoke to the Jewish people. A big, massive angel, right, filled the whole, the whole cosmos, and he spoke to, no, it wasn't not an angel. Definitely not. It was not an angel. It was the essence of God, the creator of all the angels, the creator of every human being. He spoke to the Jewish people on Mount Sinai. And the reason why God did such a weird thing, and if you read the Torah, you see that it's very not godly. The Torah is a very sort of complicated book. You know, it's very complicated, all these weird laws about, loaning money and borrowing money, and somebody's ox kills somebody else's, the sheep, and taking a sheep and stealing it. If you kill it, then you're guilty. If you don't kill it, you're less guilty. It does, incredible laws and laws that make no sense whatsoever. Don't cook milk with meat. You can't cook milk with meat. You cook milk with meat, this is a big sin you get. But what could be possibly wrong with cooking milk and meat? Cooking. Eating it is another sin. You're not allowed to cook. What could possibly, why would God care about a thing like that? And all the commandments of the Torah, that's basically, and the reason is because God is not like us. God is not limited to being spiritual, like all the other religions think. God cares about every little detail in the world, every little detail. And therefore, when we read the Torah, so we're reminding ourselves, first of all, that God cares about every detail and what exactly this implies, which details he cares about and what we're supposed to do. Okay, 99% of the Torah, the laws in the Torah, are for the Jews only. 99%. Some people say the Rambam that all the monetary laws are for everybody. So that means that, let's say, 70% of all the laws in the Torah, 80% of the laws in the Torah are only for Jews. Keeping Shabbat only for the Jews. Non-Jews are not supposed to keep Shabbat. Right? And there's massive laws about Shabbat. The laws of marriage, laws of this, the divorce, Yibum, all these laws which are only relevant to the Jewish people. Okay, so when God gave, why? Because the Jewish people are special. God chose the Jewish people to be the teachers and the priests, whatever, for the whole entire world. We're supposed to educate the world. What are we supposed to educate the world? As I've said so many times, that God loves everyone, as God's creating everyone from love. So if you want to have any doubts if God loves you, so if you exist, then you can be sure God loves you, because your existence comes from God. God is creating you. Okay, but He's not just creating you that you should say thank you about God for creating you, for creating me. He's creating you so that you should control yourself, and you should do what God wants and refrain from what God doesn't not want. And 70%, 80%, whatever, this is relevant to the Jewish people. How we're supposed to control ourselves. And not only just doing it, but also the attitude that we have. So here we go. Seder, the order of reading the Torah is like this. The Torah is one big scroll, right? One big, huge scroll. But it's divided up into segments. And the place where it's where you stop on Shabbat in the morning, right? How do we read the Torah? The Torah in Judaism, the Torah is read 4 times a week. 4 times a week. It's read on Shabbat. That's the end of the week. Then on Shabbat. Then it's read on Thursday before that, and Monday before that. So the Torah is read on Monday, Thursday, and Shabbat. On Monday, it's just read 1/7, one little portion of the Torah, the weekly portion on Monday. And on Thursday, the same thing, only one little portion. The first 1/7 is divided into 7 readings every Shabbat. The first one is read on Monday. Also, it's repeated again on Thursday. And the whole entire Torah portion is read on Shabbat. But then Mincha of Shabbat, near the end of Shabbat, is read the beginning of next week's Torah portion. And so it comes out that the Torah portion that we read this Shabbat, which is Parshat Ki Teitzei, and that it was preceded by 3 readings before that, on the Mincha of Shabbat, the preceding Shabbat, on Monday and on Thursday, and then finally on Shabbat Ki Teitzei. So we've read it basically 4 times. Just the first 3 times we just read 1 little 7th of it. But the last, okay, so the law is like this. And on Shabbat, what we read on Shabbat in the daytime, that's the last time we read this Torah portion. On Mincha of Shabbat, and there was later on in Shabbat, before the end of Shabbat, then we begin to read next week's Torah portion. Oh, so it says, the place where you stop in Shachrit in the morning, the Mincha Korim, you read it the next week's Torah portion. For instance, the first week of the year, where you stop Breshit, on Mincha you read Noach. That's next week. You read 10 sentences or more. And similarly, is it every single week of the year, we read the Torah portion on Shabbat, and on Mincha we read 10 sentences. We have to understand the 2 portions that we read on this Shabbat, this coming Shabbat. What are we reading? We're reading Ki Teitzei. That's the end. The last time we'll read Ki Teitzei, right? We've already read it on the Mincha which of last Shabbat, and on Monday and on Thursday. So now we read all of Parshat Ki Teitzei. And on Mincha of this coming Shabbat, we read Parshat Ki Tavo. So it ends up that on Shabbat we read these 2 Torah portions, which are called Ki Teitzei and Ki Tavo. Ki Teitzei means to go out, when you go out, and Ki Tavo means when you come in. When you come in. This we read at Mincha. That they are seemingly opposite things. The names of the Torah portion, that the name shows on what they are, Teitzei and Tavo, means going out and coming in. These are 2 opposite things. Okay, now you might say, so what? Come on, it's just two names. What difference does it make? So you called it Fred and Joe. Yes, but this is the Torah. And the Torah is written by God. And God wrote the Torah for us because he cares about us. And God wrote the Torah to teach us something. So it must be that every detail of the Torah has some sort of a deep meaning in it. Deep meaning in it. I know there used to be, you went to university, so there used to be, sometimes they would take like poets or, famous book writers, whatever it is, authors, and they would, every word, this is what he implied by this word. There's also artists. See this line over here that represents his father used to beat him when he was young. And this little point over there, that's talking about that he lost a dime when he was 15 years old. But every little detail is important by just these normal authors, Dostoevsky, what he thought. Here's a book written by God. So every single word is important and every single detail is important. On this week's Torah portion, we read, on this week's Shabbat, coming Shabbat, we read two Torah portions. The daytime, we read Ki Teitzei, and on Mincha, in the afternoon, we read Ki Tavo. Two opposites on the same Shabbat. What is the message that God is trying to tell us over here? Listen, this is a message from God. It's not a message from me, message from God. So it's pretty important. God is creating you, he's creating me, and he wants us to improve ourselves. And here he's giving us a message. The Rebbe is telling us what the message is. Ki teitzei lemilchama on your enemies, and ki tavo, and when you come into the land of Israel, yirishta v'yeshavta bo, and you possess it and you dwell in it. This is really two opposites. Going out to war is that you're fighting the enemy. You're risking your life. You're insecure. You're in a situation where you're not at home. You can't go to the refrigerator and take something to eat again. You're in the middle of the one wrong move, you're a dead man. That's war. And the other is the Mincha, we read Kitava, when you come, this is coming into the land of Israel and a place which is settled. You're settling down. You reach there, you take it over and you settle in it. Going out to war and coming back and settling in the land, these are two opposite situations. Shekain also, even in a war, even though in the war, says you don't have to worry, you can rely on God, that God is going to put it into your hand, and you will even take prisoners. But nevertheless, God wants us to do it. Harizeh Kashur, this is connected. Nevertheless, a war is a situation of heder menucha v'tyashvut, that you are not in a comfort zone and you are not settled down. You are not stable. Like it's expressed in the Rambam that says, since you kanes l'kishrei milchama, as soon as a soldier gets involved in the war, as yishan al makom, he should rely on mikveh Yisrael, on the God of Israel. The yasim nafsho b'kapo, he should put his soul into his hand. In other words, throw your soul away. Don't think about what's going to be. Don't think about your family. Don't think about yourself at all. You go into war, you have to think about one thing: conquering the enemy. In order to conquer the enemy, of course, you have to protect yourself. You have to, if you're wounded, that you can't, right? But you're not worried about being wounded because you don't want to get hurt. You're worried about being wounded because that will interfere with the goal of the war. V'lo yachshov lo al ishto, you shouldn't think about your wife going out to war. Don't think about your wife, not your children. Yifnei mikol davar, you should take your mind off of everything and think only of one thing: war. B'kol libo, b'kol nafsho, with all of your heart and with all of your soul. This is exactly the opposite. That's ki teitzei l'milchama. This is the opposite of what we read in the Mincha when we say, when you come into the land of Israel, then it's going to be ish tachat gafno, ish tachat ta'inoto, and each person will be under his grapevine and under his fig tree. Until lavat bikurim, until, that's what it says in the next week's Torah portion, you bring the first fruits after you divided up the land. You conquered the land and you divided it up. So it's talking about when you get settled in the land, then you bring the first fruits of your orchard. Yeshivat Yaminim, from the 7 types that the land of Israel is blessed with. But often in a way, v'samachta b'kol hatov, You should rejoice. You should rejoice with all of the good. Hityashvus in a way that's settled down. Okay, so what we have to, in other words, the Rebbe is trying to tell us that somehow or other we have to embody these two opposites at the same time. Fighting a war, being on the move all the time, dynamic and moving, and at the same time we have to be very settled and very calm. Okay, here we go. Kite Alderich is similarly also in regarding to explanation of what it means by us in serving God. When you go out to war on your enemies, more this indicates aliyatzira of going out of the godly soul from its source above in the world of Atzilut, a spiritual level, highest of the spiritual levels. And this it says, Neshama shenatatali tahorahi. It says, the soul that you gave me is pure. That's the Jewish soul, pure of the pures, sons of God, connected to the essence of God. And then what does God do? He takes the soul and he pushes it down into the world, ad la'olam into this physical world. Al-Zen Amar, it says, Ata barata, you created it, Ata yatzarta, nafachta bi, meshama bekirvi, you keep it inside of it. God forces the soul. We say this in our prayers every morning. And God forces the soul to be in a body and in an animal soul in order in order to refine them and to purify them. Until that this is a way of milchama im menaged. You have to make a war with the enemy. Coming into the world, that's teitzei milchama. The soul goes out from its source, where it is basking in the oneness of God, and the soul comes into the world, and all of a sudden it becomes a person with a personality, it becomes an egotist, and it gets angry, and it is depressed, and all these other things, etc. And you were here in the world to make a war against the world. The world wants to conquer us, and we want to conquer it. It's not just enough to hold our ground. We're put into the world for a job, to transform the world, not just to be not moved by the world, but to move the world. We have to make a war, but especially now in the time of exile, and because of the concealment and the cheshek and the darkness of exile. So it's stressed very much the power of a menaged, of the opposition. So automatically, if we know the necessity of making a war with power, with strength, in order to negate the opposer. There's these kids that get into in video games, right? They video games. They said that they play wars and they're whatever it is, but they don't have to have any courage. It doesn't require any courage. You're not in any danger. When you're in an actual war, people want to kill you. So then you really have to, not just defend yourself. You have to kill them. And the other people, they're really serious that they're not going to back down. You can't say, let's make a deal. It's not going to work. War is a time where wherever you see could be a potential at the end of your life. People want to kill you. It's not like walking down the streets. You say, oh, I'm sorry, I bumped into somebody, right? People are waiting with arrows, with guns, with what they want to. It's a time of a war. That's like the exile. And we have to have courage. We have to have fortitude. We have to have bravery. You have to have strength and alacrity and all these other things. And especially you have to have, how do you say, you want to call it dynamic, viciousness. You got to be vicious. You got to go into war and be vicious and take care of your enemy. That's the whole job. That's the opposite of being rested. You shouldn't do any of those things when you're at home. To be vicious, to be jumping around, the alacrity is going to stop stabbing and shooting. They put you in a mental institution. So if so, these two things are together. So says the Rebbe, that's the idea of the Jewish soul. The Jewish soul comes from its source into the world, and when it comes in the world, it's at war. And the opposite, what we read in Mincha is when you come, this is when you go out to war. This is when you come in to the land. When you come into the land that God gives you, that's the second thing that we read in Mincha. When you go into the land that God gave you, and you will gave you for an inheritance, and you will conquer it, and you will dwell in it. This indicates on menucha v'shalom. You've conquered it. There's no more enemies. There's no more problems. There's no more threats, no fear. You don't have to look over your shoulder. There's a man at the time when the Jewish people sit on their land, and the holy temple is the opposite, totally the opposite of the situation of kitetse, of going out to war. And both of these things we read on this coming Shabbat. So there must be a lesson how we can embrace both of these attitudes in our day-to-day life simultaneously. Oh, we'll see. We're still explaining. Even more, this idea of coming into the land of Israel, being settled. This is the Kriya, when we read the Torah, this is eternal. This is relevant not just the time of the Holy Temple, or not just the religious people. This is relevant to everybody. And it's relevant right now. That it's relevant, Gam also, mainly the Avi at the Oretz, V'Yerushta, V'Yeshavta Bo, the Atid level. This is relevant mainly to the future redemption. Begula mitit b'shlema, in the future redemption by means of the Mashiach. Now we have a big misconception that there is in the world that it's possible to bring all the Jews into Israel without the Mashiach. This is a big mistake. This is not true. And even though that there's a lot of rabbis that hold that way, but it's certainly not true. It's a big error. The only way that the Jews are really going to be in the land of Israel is through Mashiach. That's the only way. That's the only way. And I mean, maybe the biggest example we can see right now is that there's Jews in Israel, and they give away Israel. They're giving it away to our worst enemies, right? And only with great difficulty are they willing to take it back, and they're worried about what the world says and whether. Nevertheless, so that what it says, the Torah portion that we read, the reading that we read on Mincha, the second one, on this coming Shabbat, is mainly talking about the Mashiach. When the Mashiach then will be kitavo el ha'oretz, all of the Jews will come to the land of Israel, and they will dwell in it. They will take it over and dwell in the land of Israel. This is by means of the Mashiach. Al Pisa, according to this, so it's stressed even more the difference and the distance between these two Torah portions. Ki tetzei the milchama. This is talking about all the time of exile. We have to fight battles. And Kitavo is talking about when Mashiach comes. It's going to be totally the opposite. Lo rak beit ofani. This is not just two ways of serving God right now, in a way of war and a way of peace. They are different one from the other, but the difference, a general difference between the work and reward. It's not just two types of work, right? One person has a work, let's say he's the manager of the company. He can be calm, right? He watches everybody else work and build. He's calm. And then there's the people who are the builders, they're the workers. So that's two types of work. One type of work is you got to really work hard. You have to this. And the other one is working easy. You come to the land, you settle down. That's what says the Rebbe. This is a bigger difference than that. This is talking about the work and the opposite of work. What's the opposite of work? Reward. You don't have to do any more work. The work is finished. Avoda, work and reward for the work. Ki tetzei the milchama. That what it says when you go out to war. This is talking about what we have to do. We have to fight. This means the whole time of exile. And when we say the parsha kitavo, that's what we read on Mincha. This is talking about the reward, what we're going to get. This is especially stressed in Amiras Limud when we learn the two Torah portions of Masechet Avot, Pirkei Avot. That's what we're going to read next week. Perek Rishon and Sheni. We read the first and the second chapters of Pirkei Avot, chapters of the Father, the same lesson. Okay, for those of you that don't know, Pirkei Avot is 6 chapters of Mishnah, teachings of the great rabbis, the Tanaim, the great rabbis, and they're not so much laws about what to do or what to say. It's more about what to think and what to feel. Attitude, 6 chapters of attitude that you should have toward life. Attitude toward life. So it says there's 6 chapters, right? So the first and the second chapter of Pirkei Avot, that you can look it up in English. Sometimes it's called the Ethics of the Fathers. You can look up in English. The first and the second chapter, that demonstrates the same thing that we're learning over here: war and reward, work and reward on this Shabbat. In the beginning of the first, it says that Moses received. How does this start? Pirkei Avot, the chapters of the fathers. It starts off, Moses received the Torah from Mount Sinai, and he gave the Torah to Joshua, and etc. And then finally, all the Jewish people until the end of all generations, how it came down from generation to generation, the Torah. Amido al Talmidei Harba, and he came to the men of the great assembly, and they said, make a lot of pupils. And that's what they taught. This is the idea of work, the work of the Jewish people in doing the Torah. The work. That's how it starts off. You have to work, you have to fix up the world. God gave the Torah, so you fix up the world. That's the first chapter. At the end of the second chapter of Pirkei Avot, it says, you should know, Shematan Scharon, that the giving of reward of tzaddikim is in the future. This is talking about not the work, but the reward. This is stressing the schar, the reward for our work. Even though that's serving, working, and receiving work, they are different. And at different times, work is before and the reward is afterwards. Like the rabbis say, Hayom lasotom, now we have to do. And tomorrow we'll receive the reward. Moshiach is going to come afterwards, not at the same time. Nevertheless, we read both of them on the same Shabbat. Oh, so now we have something really difficult to do. Let's say, you're working, but you work in a calm way. So there's ways of working and being this work for being calm. In fact, according to most opinions, the calmer you are, the less tension you have, the better you can work. Right? Like piano players, if they're tense, their hands are tense, then they can't play fast. They have to be calm. They have to this. So you're working hard, but you're calm at the same time. Good. But here's 2 different things. This is talking about work and reward. Reward always comes after you finish working. How can they be both at the same time? How can it be that we're in exile working and Mashiach is at the same time? The reward, how can it be? How can it possibly be? How can they both in the same time, in the same Shabbat, we read both of these 2 things: work and reward, exile and Mashiach simultaneously. How can it possibly be? The explanation is like this. And the Kudas Abira is like this. Techilas Akriya, we begin to read Ki Tavo after, in the continuation of Ki Tetzei. This coming Shabbat, we read Ki Tetzei in the morning, and then in the afternoon we read Ki Tavo. Ki Tetzei means going out to war. Ki Tavo means receiving the reward. And this is like an explanation and a clarification to Parshas Ki Tetzei. That we read Ki Tavo, when you come to the land of Israel, this is really the finale and the conclusion and an explanation. Why are we fighting? Why are we coming into the land of Israel? Why are we fighting our enemy? Why? So it's really one big topic. That also the service, the war that we make, going out to war, it has to be in a way that when you make war, that it has to be in a way that it's calm and certain. Certain. Ki tavo, like you're coming into the land of, like your work is already done. And even more. In general, the service of God, yeshno kavar me'en v'dugma ad litchila mamed u'matzav d'schar. When you're serving God, you already feel that the reward is already here. How can this be? We'll see. That's what the Rebbe is going to explain. Well, Basigno in a Mishnah, like it says in Pirkei Avot, you should know that the reward for the tzaddikim is in the future to come. Sheyesh Loma, we can say the meaning is that the service that we do when we serve God, this is because of an attachment and a joining da, means to be attached to be unified. Like it says, the man knew his wife, knew it. You should be attached. And that with the situation of Scharan Shel Tzadikim, the reward in the future. What does that mean? That when we do the service now, we should already feel the reward in the future. Let's just give it a little explanation over here. A lot of people, it's very common. Judaism is how do you say, a very demanding religion, if you want to call it a religion. It's very demanding. What's demanding? There's a lot of commandments, a lot of prohibitions, to do. Takes up a lot of our time. It takes up a lot of our attitude. At Judaism, we're supposed to be serving God. We're fixing up the world. And we don't see very many results. It says that doing a commandment is worth more than all of the treasures in this world. Who feels a thing like that? You put on a commandment, you put on tefillin, it's really better than finding $1,000 in the street or getting $1 million in the jackpot of whatever it is. Or somebody says to you, "I'll give you $10 million in your bank account if you eat milk and meat together." $10 million. Let's see the money, right? You don't say, "What are you talking about? You're nuts." I would do, right? It's like if somebody came up to you and said, I'll give you $10 million if you cut off your hand. You'd say, "Get away from me. You're crazy," right? You're crazy. Well, commandments are much more valuable than anything, even our hand. Come on, we feel it. We don't feel it. We feel exactly the opposite. We don't feel anything. Says the Rebbe, that's the big problem, but we can feel it. That's what this is coming to teach us. That when we do the commandment, it's possible to feel the reward a little bit, even when we do the commandment. To be a little bit crazy for God. Yesh Lomar, we can say, this is hinted at in Kiteitzei Milchama, in the parsha itself, when you go out to war. Shabon Ne'amar, it says the commandment of giving a sachir. In this first chapter that we're learning, this first reading that we read this Shabbat, is talking about paying off your workers. A commandment in the Torah. If you have people that work, you have to work for you, and you agreed with them that they have to receive daily wages, then you must pay them day by day. You can't say, "You know what, I'll put off today, I'll pay at the end of the week." You can't do that. You have to pay b'yomotitein. You have to give the reward on that day. Moving, so it's understood also regarding to if God writes us in the Torah, it's God writing it. If God writes us in the Torah, so it must have a very deep and spiritual and godly implications also, that the reward for our service of the Jewish people by means of God, the word of that's God is our boss, right? This is like a balabayit. He's the boss, and we are the workers, and God has to pay us, like it says in the mission of Pirkei Avot, on this Shabbat, that we're going to get a reward. That's what it says, matan scharo. It's going to be in the future. Tomorrow we're going to receive the reward. What does this mean? Rebbe is going to ask a question on this. It says, so v'yeshnu gam schar, even though it says in the Mishnah we're going to receive the reward in the future, right? We've been waiting 4,000 years for this reward, for the Moshiach to come, fix up the world. We've been waiting, but nevertheless, says the Rebbe, we have to say that there's also reward today. It says in the Torah portion that the boss has to pay every day. You have to pay the reward every day. How can God say, "I'm going to pay in another today," and we only get it after 4,000 years? How does it fit in? Says the Rebbe, don't worry about it. The reward is coming today. It's right now. You can feel it right now. How are you going to feel it right now? That's going to be the topic of our class tomorrow. How can we feel the reward of Torah and the commandments, the godliness in it right now?